Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Morning Express, and on this part of the show we shall be talking about cash crisis at the county level. We had months of a standoff. Then last month we had the senators unanimously passing a revenue allocation formula, but a few days ago we had a COJ chair, Wycliffe Oparanya, urging the president to intervene and ensure that counties get the allocations that they deserve in order to keep the counties going, development agendas going, as well as certain sectors upheld as we go along with this very turbulent year. So joining me for this discussion is Kevin Osido, County Governance Watch. He began with us at the press review level, and then we have Governor for Kisii County, James Ongwae, as well as Speaker for Nyeri County, John Kagusha. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Now remember,
thank you very much, ma'am.
Yes. Now remember, you can be a part of this conversation by answering our question that we are asking you this morning. Are you satisfied with how funds allocated to the county have been put to use or have been utilized? Are you satisfied with how funds allocated to the county have been utilized? I'm at Trix Ingado. The hashtag to use is KTN Morning Express. You can tag me or Michael G. Gitonga. That is Michael's, tag. So let's get into it. So the best person, I think, on our panel this morning to paint us a picture of what was happening before that unanimous passing of the formula, it would be Kevin Osido, an outsider who's heavily invested. But of course, I understand that we have lost him. So I'll give this one over to you, Honorable Kagusha. Could you tell us what the problem was before the unanimous passing and why we were all expecting that talk of a cash crisis would be something of the past?
Yeah. In the first place, we have had the cash crisis almost every other year when we are beginning the government financial year in July. And this has now persisted year in, year out. And it's surprising that the Senate has not seen it fit to fix the challenges and the problems that have been recurring every year. Of course, we have had different challenges every other year. This year, the challenge has been the passing of the third revenue generation formula, which ought to have been passed way beyond or before July this year. And as all of us would know, even from the media that has reported very well, the Senate had this formula long before end of last financial year. In fact, they have had the formula for over a year. And they ought to have been looking at it, they ought to have been working on it, so that by the time we are in July this year, when we are beginning this financial year, they ought to have passed that formula so that they can now use the counter revenue allocation bill, or basing it on that third generation formula. And of course, all of us understand that that's where the problem began, when the senators could not agree on how the funds should be distributed across the counties. Because again, this is a very important issue on what goes to which county. And last year, the challenge which we had, which brought again this crisis, is where the Senate would not agree with the National Assembly and the Executive on the amount of money that was to be allocated to the counties. And of course, you remember there were the figures like 316 billion, there was 310 billion, there was 335 billion. And of course, eventually they agreed on 316 billion to go to the counties. And that again took so much time. And so for that reason, you find that counties have been running on dry every other first quarter of the financial year. And this year, we as you can see, we are not even expecting the money to come before probably even the end of this month. And that would actually be either in November or almost in November. And what does that portend for us as counties? It is difficult to run the activities in the counties without these funds, without salaries for staff. You find the staff are very, very demotivated. They are very demoralized. A lot of them not only demotivated, they can't pay their fare to work. A lot of them are being chased out of their rental houses because they can't pay their rent, they can't pay their bills, and of course, delivery of services as well to the residents of counties has become a very, very big challenge. And this looks like someone is slowly digging the grave for devolution in Kenya.
With your explanation, but I'd like to bring in Governor Ongwae to paint us an even clearer picture of where the shoe pinches as far as these revenue allocations are concerned. Speaker Kagushia has rightly pointed out that this is an annual, every other year we're having the same problem. Of course, this year was more significant because it persisted for quite a while and there was a lot of publicity surrounding it. So from your view as a governor, where did the shoe pinch and why is it that even after that unanimous passing, you're still talking about a cash crisis and with the appeals being sent to the president for an intervention?
Thank you very much, ma'am, and the entire KTN fraternity and all the Kenyans who are watching. For us, for me as a governor, it has been a very sad situation, especially this particular year. But it has also happened on every transition year, financial transition year. But this particular year, we're now into the 4th month and we have not received any money. It is a situation that is untenable, especially when one is aware that the Senate was given that formula about 2 years ago. So what one would have expected the Senate would have done about 2 years ago is to have those discussions, even if they were negative discussions, they would have resolved them more than 2 years ago. So that by the time we reach the stage of implementation, then we are not losing time. For us as governors,
yes, Governor, I would like to interject a bit. What is it about our systems that makes this a persistent problem? Do you blame the senators? Is it the laws surrounding revenue allocation? What is it that is making it such a thorny issue that seems to drag on as it does?
I think our constitution makers may have missed the point a little bit in ensuring that the issue of revenue, the issue of giving counties the resources, was not a negotiable issue. Where they left a lacuna was that they made it a negotiable issue for every month. The second problem that counties have got is that we receive our funds on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
While national government actually receives on a quarterly basis. And so we have certain months being skipped, and that gets us into a lot of problems.
Right. Now, Governor, when we talk about the use of said funds, we have development, we have health, and many other very critical sectors that depend on this revenue. But at the same time, there has been accusations of bloated wage bills at the county level, whereby most of the funds go into recurrent expenditures. What is your take on that perspective?
That may well be true, but it is a persistent problem, not only for county governments, but also for national government. I do recall one time in the 90s, I actually happened to be the program director of the Kenya Civil Service Reform Program, and our job then was, as part of the structural adjustment program of government with IMF and World Bank, we reduced numbers drastically in order to ensure that the recurrent budget in relation to the development budget, the numbers for the recurrent budget were much lower so that we would have more development. That happened. When we came into the counties, unfortunately, we found staffing levels that were very high because we took over staff that belonged to local authorities. The problem with the local authorities was the unregulated employment that had occurred. But do recall that according to our labor laws, if somebody has got a job, you can't just remove that person from that job.
Right.
And that is why the national government and the county government, we actually came together to start the whole issue of quantification of staffing in the counties and even in national government. And that is still going on. That discussion is still going on.
Now, it's a very interesting element that you brought up that is very rarely spoken about or explained in terms of those recurrent expenditures. Speaker Kagusha, could you speak to that, the way county revenue is actually used by the county governments? What is your take on the accusation on recurrent expenditure, and do you agree with what Governor Ongwae said in terms of the need for accommodating certain persons in the sort of wheel that ensures that these county governments keep going, keep turning?
Yeah, indeed. I agree with Governor Ongwae that the reason why the county have bloated recurrent expenditure is because of the staffing levels. If, for example, you take Nyeri County, where amongst about 7 others, they were provincial headquarters, you find that they did not only take on board the staff from the municipal councils and the county councils, but they also took over some of the staff from the national government functions that were devolved. So you find that like teachers who are largely in service of the TSC, but were devolved to the ECDs, and agricultural staff who are extension staff who are in the Ministry of Agriculture, and even the health staff who are actually Ministry of Health staff. They were all absorbed into the counties now to execute the mandate, which was now devolved to the counties. So for that reason, you find that counties, some of the counties do have very, very huge staffing levels, and you can just let these people go. But I also think there's also, looking at it from the flip side, you also realize that the recurrent expenditure, which goes to the payment of salaries, is not necessarily a bad thing, because we as a country are also looking for employment of our people. And so if we have so many people who are still earning their daily bread from these county governments, it also means that to some extent they are also able to sustain the economy from wherever they are. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. What would be bad is where we are losing much more money in corruption. And of course, the money we lose in corruption at times would probably employ just as many people as we are complaining about in the counties. The other issue is that a lot of the staffers that we have in the counties are also retiring. And so there is need then to ensure that there's rationalization of the staffing levels as the older staff retires and we get new professionals to work in different positions. There's need then to rationalize at that point, and otherwise we have the challenge of bloated wage bills, which we have to contend with for the next several years, as most of the older civil servants actually get their retirement into, from the civil service.
Okay. Now, before I'd like us to go back to the issue of the county, the revenue allocation, and the fact that this has not actually, the passing of that formula has not seen county governments get monies. Kevin Osido, we've got you back. Could you speak to that appeal made by Governor Oparanya that the president should intervene and ensure that we are getting monies at the county to ensure that they go on with their development agenda and make sure things are running, even those recurrent expenditures that we've just talked about?
Thank you so much, Trix. I think it's important that we treat devolution not as a special interest issue, but as a constitutional issue and a matter that is really very important for Kenyans, and particularly looking at, because you mentioned, His Excellency the President, the legacy of the President, because it is only during this presidency that we have seen a lot of issues, particularly relating to devolution. But it is also true to say that he's the inaugural president of devolution. So 2013, when devolution started, he is the president. And I think Kenyans will need to judge him in a manner in which should also excite him, particularly when it comes to engaging on matters of devolution. So what that means is, can we be able to see institutions that are supposed to deal with this kind of issues coming up to make decisions? For example, the summit, which is chaired by His Excellency the President, when Council of Governors through the chair and all the governors, and good morning, Governor Ongwae, when they present issues to the summit, can we have timelines for execution? The second issue is, I think we also need to, and I like what my co-panelists have talked about because they have given us very clear histories of where we are coming from my good friend, Speaker of Nyeri and the Governor, in terms of 10 years into the Constitution, 2010 and 7 years of devolution, where are we exactly? But I think it's also important for counties to begin to ask themselves and ourselves, how do we generate on-source revenue? So that then this perennial dependency on the national government is really dealt with. Can counties be able to have successes in raising their own revenues so that we don't have to always go back to treasury or national government to ask for money? Because really, when those kind of issues happen, tricks, it is service delivery that is being hampered. And it is very, very sad when we hear of county officials being asked to leave their houses, they are unable to provide meals for their children. It is a sad state of affairs. And in the context of COVID-19, when everybody is suffering from mental health issues, we have psychological issues that we are dealing with, counties have to also be innovative. And the governor, and we all know that counties are now mapped out according to regional economic blocks. What is the value add for these blocks? Can blocks be able to generate particular areas of values that then can accrue heavy investment of resources so that we use those particular investments to generate revenue for the regional blocks, which then coil back or get plowed back into the counties? Because unless we do that, then we are going to, in a few years or months, be talking about high rates of unemployment. And then we'll be talking about high rates of insecurity because young people will be losing jobs. Parents who are county government officials will be unable to take care of their children, and ultimately look at the degree of insecurity that we'll be walking ourselves into. So tricks, yes, it is important that His Excellency the President speaks, and particularly because he has this Big Four agenda, a lot of it is taking place at the county levels. There is no way we will be able to ensure that we achieve Big Four when counties are stifles of resources. I agree with the Speaker, John Kagushia, that probably there is a crop of people whose interest is to mess up devolution. But I think that would be a very unfortunate plan. It's something that Kenyans should not allow ever to happen in this country.
Yes, now I'd like to bring in Governor Ongwae yes?
Tricks, I would want to put something into perspective.
Yes.
Yeah, on the issue of counties relying on the national government.
Indeed, yes, that's where I was going.
Yeah, on that one, I think sometimes as Kenyans we probably get it wrong, because we have 48 governments in Kenya. We have the county governments, and we have the national government. And all these governments, none of them is supposed or is actually dependent on the other as such in terms of revenue. In fact, what happens is that we have the 48 governments, and then we have Kenya Revenue Authority. Now, Kenya Revenue Authority is an independent body that should collect revenue from across the country for the 48 governments. And once the Kenya Revenue Authority collects the revenue for the 48 governments, it's supposed now to apply the formula which is generated by the CRA to then divide this money as per what the Constitution says and what the Senate passes to the 48 governments. Now, that then removes the issue of the perception like county governments are relying on the national government for assistance. No, it's not assistance, it's not favor. It is resources which are collected by the Kenya Revenue Authority on behalf of the 48 governments. The other thing is that counties are also investing heavily in revenue generation in their respective areas. When counties, for example, support agricultural production in the counties, then much more resources are generated from agricultural activities in the counties. Counties cannot then collect that revenue. That revenue is collected by KRA, not by counties. And when KRA collects that revenue, which is being generated from the activity
on the fact that
by the counties in the counties, then KRA shares that revenue to the 48 governments.
Yes.
The county governments
That is understood, Speaker. I'd like to bring in Governor to also speak to that from his perspective and tell us why it's that financial or revenue independence is not quite a simple matter as one would assume. Governor, could you tell us and explain to us, Kisii does have resources that one would easily assume could actually put more money into the pockets of the locals there. But that's not how simple it could be. It's more complicated than that. Explain that to us and what you think should change. Perhaps should the system change to ensure that county governments are able to develop their own revenue and based on the resources they have?
Thank you very much, ma'am. I've been listening to the arguments. The broader issue of revenue is that we have been left with very few revenue streams, actually in miscellaneous areas like markets and so on. So even if you wanted to expand the size of revenue in the counties, it becomes very difficult because effectively the bulk of the revenue is raised by national government, by the Kenya Revenue Authority. And for us, the streams that we are left with cannot make you raise the revenues that can actually develop the country. They only are able to fill in certain gaps. And that is a problem for this country because I think Kenyans are overburdened through taxation. So if they are taxed by national government, we are also taxing them. Sometimes you sympathize. Let's take the last case of what happened during the COVID-19. Most counties, including mine, we actually stopped collecting revenue in nearly quite a number of areas in the markets because in the first place the markets were closed. We had to stop border collecting any resource from border, from taxi and from all those areas because of movements were also not there. So we are dealing here with a situation that is completely untenable and a situation where you can't argue that counties can only can improve their development through their own revenue generation. I think this is an area where, and again I have to go back to the Constitution. The Constitution needs to come out very clearly about the revenues that are going to the county. If you look, for instance, at what the counties are getting, 15% of the national cake, the bulk of the money remaining in Nairobi in ministries and other areas. I think you need to, the journalism industry needs to be much more serious on finding out what the money that is remaining in Nairobi, what it actually does in Nairobi, because most of those functions are actually devolved. So let's take health, for instance. Health is devolved. Why do the resources remain, the bulk of the resources remain in Nairobi? Agriculture is devolved. Why do the bulk of the resources remain in Nairobi? So pushing counties like now in a county like Kisii, I spend 45% of my budget on health services, crowding out the development in other areas like in roads, like in agriculture, like in water services, in urban development, in youth and women empowerment. So it is a broader problem than what we are saying. Of course, like me now, I'm thinking very seriously of bringing in Kenya Revenue Authority to collect revenue for me. But I'm not sure that that will help me. It will probably just fill in the gap a little bit, but it's not the end result.
Okay.
The end result is to improve this economy. The end result is to ensure that the fungible areas where the revenue is not coming in from or where the revenue is disappearing to are closed up. I think these are the issues that we need to discuss as Kenyans going forward.
Yeah. Now, Honorable Kagusha, tell us about devolution and health, because this seems to be a problem that we haven't figured out. What's the problem with that, and how is the cash crunch that we're experiencing right now affecting the delivery of services, given that we are in the middle of a pandemic, even though the numbers have been deemed to be going down, but still it is a problem, particularly at the county level?
We have a big challenge because when you don't have resources and funds to finance the health sector, then you find that you have very, very demotivated staff. And of course, a lot of other things that are supposed to be used in hospitals, like in the laboratories, like the reagents, and also even simple tests that are supposed to be done. You find that you're not receiving that. And even the drugs that are supposed to be sent to the hospitals through KEMSA. And that is a big challenge. Remember, the counties are the ones which are running the level 4 hospitals, and they're also running the level 5 hospitals, and also level 3 and level 2. And also, they also deal with the issue of level 1, where we are looking at the community health workers. And you see, without finances and without funds, all these levels of health are jeopardized to a great extent. Of course, we have had a pandemic where quite a bit of resources were also released to the counties, and probably now from an oversight perspective as a county assembly, maybe this is where I also want to challenge our governors that they need to use the finances that were sent to the counties through COVID-19 pandemic to enhance our health capacity in the counties. And of course, that is somewhere I know for sure we do have a gap, because when these funds again do not find their way into supporting the health system that has been so weakened over time, and that really needs to have a serious boost. If we don't do it, then we are going to be left with a weaker health system, because it's going to be weakened much more by this pandemic than even what has happened before. So we can only try to reverse this by using the funds that have been allocated to counties through the COVID-19 pandemic fund positively. And I know we are also getting funds from other donor countries, which are also, and also others are going to come through loans. Like I know there's quite an amount that is coming from France government. I want to hope and believe and challenge our governors that let us use these funds to really boost the health sector in our counties. Yeah, but eventually we seriously need to relook at how we are running health in the country, because I have personally proposed in the past that we need to actually come up with a with a health commission, which can deal with the health as a whole in the country, and without having to withdraw funds, because Governor Wai has raised a very, very important issue, that you have 85% of the funds in health sector remaining in Nairobi, only 15% going to the counties, yet counties are the ones which are running most of the activities there. I have suggested in the past, and this is really a personal opinion, that the 15% that we are already getting in the counties should be used only for community health workers and dispensaries and health centers. That is from level 1 to level 3. And then we have the 85% that is retained in Nairobi used now for level 4 and level 5 and level 6. Of course, most of level 6 are actually parastatals. But that is what should happen, so that you kind of withdraw level 4 and level 5 from the counties, but you retain all the resources that have been coming to the county, so that then they can be used to by the level 3, level 2, and level 1. And that way, you are likely to find some of the counties being very innovative and very creative by raising the standards in level 3s, such that they run like level 4s. If you go to Cuba, you will be surprised to find that a lot of their hospitals, for example, do have oxygen. Even level 3s, they would actually be surprised and shocked how a level 3 or a level 4 hospital would run without a bulk oxygen, which is piped into, for use by the patients who need it. So those are some of the areas and some of the things that I think we need to review. Probably the next time we have a health conference, between the national government and the county governments.
Right, and we shall take a short break. On the other side of this break, we shall have Kevin Osido's sentiments on county governance and the health sector and how it's being handled. Remember, you can be a part of this conversation by telling us if you are satisfied with how funds allocated to county governments are utilized. Let's take that break. When we come back, we'll have more for you right here on Morning Express.